What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Where Life Exists. Today, we're going to be giving you the conclusion of the Why I Stay series, and I'm going to be talking about not just why I stay, but I'm going to be talking about how I stay. Welcome to a podcast about disciple making in the public square, where we talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. This is where life exists. This is Where Life Exists, where we talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. My name is Dhati Lewis, and I am the lead pastor of Blueprint Church and the vice president of the Sin Network. And today I am talking about, we're concluding the Why I Stay series. And today I'm going to be specifically talking about how I stay. So as we bring this series to a close, I just want to use today to share some encouragement and some principles on how to stay. I want to start by acknowledging again how hard this is. If God is calling you as a minority to stay within white evangelical spaces, there is a lot for you to lament. So let's just recognize that. So my first encouragement to you is to engage your heart. You know, when I talk about engaging your heart, what I'm saying is that we need to identify your feelings. And those feelings may be up and down throughout this feeling. Even in the Why I Stay series, I've had many different feelings and different emotions. So you have to identify your feelings. Second, we need to explore your feelings. So explore them, understand where, allow your feelings to hit tab on those, allow them to take you to where they need to go. Third, we need to express their feelings. Remember, there's not sin in having feelings. The Bible tells us to be angry, but don't sin. So identifying your feelings and exploring your feelings, there's no sin in that. But basically, it begins when we start to express them. So that's really where we got to understand what we do with our feelings is important. How we express them are important. So we got to always take them to the right places. We need to create space and draw the boundaries in order to keep courage and to keep heart, because you can lose heart in this. The second encouragement that I want to give you is to walk in wisdom. Walk in wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, Solomon gives us two options from the beginning of these two polarizing paths that we see of wisdom and foolishness. Solomon basically tips his hand early on, and he basically says, I want you to follow the way of Lady Wisdom, right? In chapter 120, he says, wisdom calls out in the street. She makes her voice heard in the public square. She cries out above the commotion. She speaks at the entrance of the city gate. How long, inexperienced ones, will you love ignorance? How long will you mockers enjoy mocking and you fools hate knowledge? But the wise woman is the woman that is calling out to you, as in the good old days when you watch those Spike Lee movies where he said, do the right thing. She represents a fight for walking integrity, walking in purity, walking according to thy will. His will be done. But on the other side, we have the lady foolish. And the foolish woman is the adulterous woman. She's committed to no one but herself. She entices you to do whatever she wants to do. So in the flip side, she's do the wrong thing. She represents an identity of dishonesty, of sinfulness, of rebelliousness against God and anyone else who stands in her path. But what we see in Proverbs chapter 9, we see basically these women that you're meant to compare and contrast in understanding their different identities, their different lifestyles, and their different destinations. So first, let's look at these two women, and let's look at the wise woman first. Let me just kind of read the text to you first. It says this: wisdom has built her house. She has carved out her 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her female servants. She calls out from the highest points of the city. Whoever is inexperienced, enter here. To the one who lacks sense, she says, come, eat my bread, drink the wine I have mixed, leave inexperience behind, and you will live. Pursue the way of understanding. Basically, the wise woman's mantra is simply this: are you confused about life? Don't know what to do? She says, I got you. Come and join me, and I'll give you some wisdom. I'll give you what you need to live in this day. But then on the flip side, what we see is the foolish woman. And the foolish woman has a different perspective, a different identity, and she looks at it a little bit differently. Verse 13, she says, folly is a rowdy woman. She is gullible and knows nothing. She sits by the doorway of her house on the seat of the highest point of the city, calling to those who pass by, who go straight ahead on their paths. Whoever is inexperienced, enter here. To the one who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, bread eaten secretly is tasty, but he doesn't know that the departed spirits are there and that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. So what we see in Proverbs chapter 9, as Solomon is ending kind of this first collection of the wisdom books, she's given these two pictures of a foolish woman and a wise woman, and they're meant to be compared in contrast. And specifically in this text, we see the 5 key areas that we are meant to compare and contrast. Is one, you see where and how both of them are living. Second, you see that they're both given this invitation and where this invitation is coming from. The third thing we see is who the invitation is to. Then we see what the invite is for. What are they inviting you to? And the fifth thing that they're seeing in there is, where is the calling going to leave you? Where is this going to take you? And I think we need to understand that both wisdom and folly are in their house. One is talking about she is building her house, right? The other one says that she's sitting at the doorway of her house. So wisdom is building her house. The other one is sitting at the door of her house. What we see is that in there, they are both calling out from the highest point of the city. They didn't have Twitter and Instagram and all those things back in those days. So during those times, if you wanted your message to get out, they needed to go to the highest point, the highest place in the city, and then basically call out. And so both of them are crying out for in prominent places in the city. All right. And the other thing that we're seeing is that both are calling out to the inexperienced, those lacking sense. I don't know about you, but no one told us, whether we need to stay or need to go. Both of these are calling out for our attention. So we are the inexperienced ones in this text. That's ultimately what I'm saying. That in both wisdom, the woman of wisdom and the woman of folly are both crying out to you, to me, and they're basically vying for your attention, vying for my attention as the inexperienced ones. And both of them are giving us an invitation to come in. The woman of wisdom says, come and eat my bread and drink the wine that I have mixed. Where the foolish woman, she has a different slight on it. Remember, because the lady woman was building her house. Now, the other woman, she wasn't talking about building her house. She was just sitting at the doorway, kind of idly watching people pass by. So her advice is stolen water is good, right? Secret bread, it's around these areas that it's better. And so she says, not only is it better not to have to do all of that, to go through all of that, it's actually better if you kind of build on someone else's stuff, eat and drink of somebody else's, fruit of their labor. One is building her house, one is skimming off the top, right? And so you see the variation that is now taking place from foolish and Lady Wisdom. Basically, Lady Wisdom is saying, leave inexperience behind, where the foolish woman says, basically, leave your conscience behind, right? Gain the understanding of life. Forget all of those. Forget it. Be ignorant. Become doomed like me. And that's really what we see taking place. And so these two women are crying out. What does that look for us in our time, in our situation? This is really important. And that's where the pinnacle of Proverbs chapter 9 comes to in 9 verse 7 and following. Both Lady Wisdom and Lady Fear, or foolishness, is at the base of just kind of this thing of this comparing and contrast. And it's meant to come to this point where choose. Choose this day who you will follow, who you will listen to. And in this section, it returns back to an earlier section in the book where it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That sounds familiar? It is familiar because it's the same that was mentioned earlier in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8. But in here and now in chapter 9, verse 10, it says the same thing. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So what we see is that the fear of the Lord, a healthy reverential fear, is the foundation of all wisdom. And that is so critical for you and so critical for me as we are making a decision of basically why I stay, and not only why I stay, but how I stay. We have to listen to wisdom. We have to. We have to listen to wisdom. And that is so critical for us to embrace and for us to understand. And again, I've said it in tweets, I've said it in different things. No one needs to put themselves in a situation where it's a harmful situation. No one. But understand that if you are in any situation and if you are speaking the truth in love in any situation, you will possibly be hurt. And there is nowhere that you can go where you will have to escape the pain. So the question becomes is, how do I remain not trying to escape the pain, but also not trying to put myself in a harmful situation? Putting yourself in a harmful situation is what we call and we understand as abusive. We are not saying continue to put yourself in an abusive situation. And there are certain areas where people are being abused and you need to run. But what this is talking about, the difference between wisdom and being unwise, I believe is really as we are approaching our situation, are we asking some key valuable questions of ourselves and those that are around us. One of ourselves is being able to say, are you teachable? Like, are you teachable? Are you willing to learn? Are you putting yourself in a position to being taught, to allowing God to teach you? Remember, and it's the very essence of his calling, where he says, listen, I'm going back to Jerusalem and I'm going to die. Peter was like, that's not a good idea, Jesus. And Jesus was like, not only get behind me because you're thinking like the world, you only think about self-preservation. And this is not about self-preservation, but it's about doing the will of the Father. And this is where we talk about passion. It was the passion of the Christ, that he needed to go into the pain because there was something greater than the pain. And so when he gives this kind of call to Peter, he says, matter of fact, if you are going to follow me, you must also take up your cross, take up your pain and follow me. So the question is, are we able to learn and to lean into the pain? Because whether you stay or whether you go, you got to lean into the pain. So are you teachable? Are you willing to listen, to lean into what God is calling you to say? Because everybody's going to have an opinion for you, but those who are called, press in and hear the voice of God and understand to be taught. The second one is, do you want to be wise? Because if you want to be wise, you got to keep pressing in to God. The Bible talks about asking, seeking, knocking. And whatever you do, whatever you decide to do, I want you to understand that you are to never stop fearing the Lord, right? The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Never stop knocking, asking the Lord, right? Never stop asking the Lord what to do. Knock, seek, ask, don't stop fearing. And I just really wanted to make sure that you are pressing in to this as you're making these types of decisions for you, for your family, and for those that are important, because this is an important thing for us to understand. And I believe that God is calling some of us to stay while he may be calling some of us to leave. And I understand that. But for those who are staying, I wanted to give you this as an exhortation and an encouragement to staying, to choose wisdom. Walk in wisdom. Understanding walking in wisdom is not putting yourself in an abusive situation, but it's understanding that you are here to be used by God and understand God and to lean into God in this, and not just kind of going because that's just the easy thing for us to do. I want to leave you with my third and final encouragement for you to stay rooted in your calling. I think that is so critical. The third encouragement is to stay rooted in your calling. A couple years ago, I had an opportunity to sit down with my mentor and friend, Dr. Crawford Loritz. And I asked him the very question that I have been answering in this series, right? And specifically, I asked him about the exhaustion and the fatigue that can come as a minority doing ministry in a predominantly white space. And this is what he said. He said, my journey drove me to the point where I had to value obedience and calling over strategy and affirmation. And that's what you come back to, because the thing that will keep you from losing your mind, from burning out, is a realization that God has his hand on you to do this. And I think a lot of you guys get burned out because we're looking for something people can't give us. Our ability to fulfill a calling is because of the nobility of the calling, and not because it's something that's convenient, or it's a career path, or it's a nice strategy, or it's something that we just say that we're involved in. That's fundamental. Somewhere along the line, you have to understand that you're ministering and working for a time that you cannot see. And the payoff is not always down here, but you've got to be convinced that you're doing the right thing, right? So my final encouragement to you is to identify your why. You need to know what God is calling you to and what his vision is for you in these spaces. That's calling. The clarity that you need, that's the purpose, is in what you are to hold on to in the midst of the loneliness, the struggles, the triumphs, and the failures of that this journey is going to take us. And so this is my encouragement to you, not only the why I stay, but how I stay. And I encourage you to keep pressing in, because the times are hard for us. And as you heard in so many of our speakers over the course of this series, and some of the guests, that that we have to be committed to something greater than ourselves. I appreciate you guys in journeying with me for this series of Why I Stay. And again, this is another episode of Where Life Exists, where we talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. My name is Dhati Lewis. Again, I'm excited. Merry Christmas. Looking forward to a better 2021 than we had in 2020. Grace and peace. Thanks for watching another episode of Where Life Exists. This has been a part of our Why I Stay series. We love to hear what you think about this video. Leave a comment below to let us know what your thoughts are and questions on today's topics. And if you want to stay up to date with the latest videos and interviews, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.